Okay, welcome to Jewish Meditation. This is an at-home session here, and I think we have a few people here who join us on Zoom and on streaming. So last week we started talking about Musar, which is Jewish ethical behavior, Jewish ethical practice. It's a little bit of a different approach than the Sphira. The Sphira is sort of looking at the Kabbalistic, the God's sort of divinity emanating through the world. And the Musar tracks how we act sort of in everyday life. It's a little bit more concrete. It's a little bit more practical, so to speak, within its essence. And so Musar, Elihu Dessler, who's one of the notable scholars, rabbis, who taught Musar in the late 19th and 20th century, he talks a lot about practical Musar, how to use it in your everyday life. And something I wanted to teach this particular evening is about choice. You call it free will, but I'll just use sort of a layman's term and call it choice. And choice is sort of defined in very interesting ways. So we talk about sort of like instances of free will within the Torah. You think about Abraham and Sarah going down to Egypt and trying to convince Pharaoh that Sarah is Abraham's sister, and whether or not that gives Pharaoh the free will to make the right choice, to not let's sort of kill Abraham and take his wife for himself, because there was such sort of a tradition in ancient times that people would take advantage of a weaker opponent, so to speak, and perhaps steal their spouse. And so this is done a couple times in Genesis, sort of the same story kind of repeated. And then there's also free will and the issue of Sodom and Gomorrah, and there's all other kinds of free will. Maybe the most famous example comes in the Exodus when God hardens Pharaoh's heart so that Pharaoh will pursue the Israelites, and then God can perform God's miracles so that all people can see God's might and God's power. So that's probably the most classic examples of free will in the Torah. How can Pharaoh have free will if God is hardening Pharaoh's heart? So it's sort of interesting questions that are posed here. So Rabbi Dessler looks at these examples, and he tries to zero in on what the real choice is. Because when we have choice, it's not as simple as saying choosing one thing over another. It's easy to choose, for instance, a luxury car over a modest car, for instance. It's easy to choose souffle, over maybe, I don't know, some home-cooked scrambled eggs, right? It's easy to choose, everything being equal, it's easy to choose nice things over not nice things. It's easy to choose people that you like over people that you don't get along with. These are easy choices. What Rabbi Dessler talks about is when the choices are more difficult, challenge us more. And he likes to zero in on sort of the conflict between, we talked about this last week, the Yetzer HaTov and Yetzer Hara. Yetzer HaTov being the good inclination and Yetzer Hara being the evil inclination. But really we think of it as the material inclination. So there's two different sides of us, right? We need both of them, the Yetzer Hara material to survive in the world, to put a roof above our heads, to procreate, to do all these things. And the Yetzer HaTov, we need to be a good person, to love other people, to empathize, to have sympathy, so on and so forth. So when the Yetzer HaTov is used a lot in a particular situation, Rabbi Dessler teaches that it becomes sort of ingrained in us to do so, ingrained us to act in a certain way. Just like when we sit for mindfulness meditation and we focus our thoughts on using our Yetzer HaTov, we're sort of programming ourselves to act in a way of Yetzer HaTov. We're programming ourselves to be more Yetzer HaTov. And Yetzer Hara, when we allow ourselves to make more difficult or make the wrong decision more often, to be tempted more often by things that we know that are wrong, then we sort of give more leeway. We sort of like grease the, what do they say? Grease the skis, or you understand what I'm saying, for the Yetzer Hara, to make it a little bit easier for it to happen, a little bit easier for us to make the wrong decision each time. And this is how people slip into, I think, a life of bad choices or harmful choices, because it happens over time, right? It doesn't just happen one day. It's a series of decisions that people can make. So the real battle, as Rabbi Dessler describes, is this conflict, is this, when you find $20 on the street and you're right near a bodega, is it hard for you to not take that $20? Let's say you really, really need it. Let's say you're down on your luck. But the right thing to do is to take the $20 into the bodega and see if anybody dropped it or wherever. But let's say you're a person who doesn't have a lot of resources and you might really need that $20. You might think of it like as a miracle, so you like have the struggle. So Rabbi Dessler talks about how it's important to make the right decision when it's a struggle for you. Right? That's when it actually counts, is to make the right decision when it's actually difficult for you to make the right decision. For you to step forward with your Yetzer HaTov, for you to, sort of grease the wheels of the Yetzer HaTov for the next time, to make that decision. And that each time you do that, Rabbi Dessler teaches that we go up an amot or whatever. We go up a level spiritually, right? We come up just a little bit every time we make a positive decision, every time we choose to be better than we are currently, every time we allow ourselves to make the right decision, we go up just a little bit. So I hope all of this makes sense about decision making, easy decision making, difficult decision making. I think the point is that easy decision making it's almost not even free will, because it's so obvious what we're going to do. The free will actually comes in the difficult decision making, when there's actually a chance that we'll do one or the other, where it might be a coin flip, right? So that's where we struggle. That's where we'll put our practice tonight. So we'll take a few deep breaths here, and then I'll do a little bit of a chant that we all know, our newer Oseh Shalom, but we'll just take a couple deep breaths first. Enjoy the calm and serenity of this experience. Just take 5 more really good deep breaths. can chant along with me. We're going to focus on this evening is one decision. And we'll make it to judge a person or a thing or a behavior less than we do now. A person, a thing, or behavior. Judgment is something we all struggle with. Get that person, that thing, that behavior in your head. Make sure it's something tough, somebody tough. Just going to put that idea, that person in our mind's eye. Just let it be something that we notice. Feel how good it feels to just notice it. And breathe through it. And if your mind starts to walk away a little bit, wander around, just come on back. If it helps, you can picture the person right in front of you. The behavior, the thing, whatever it is. Just feel what it feels like to say nothing and do nothing. So give me a few more breaths in here. Second. There we go. So let's go back to a teaching from last week just to wrap up. Last week we talked about touching the spiritual, how a reward in this world, no matter how good it is, no matter how we're all the rewards of all the worlds, of all those who had ever lived, all the rewards for all the mitzvot here on earth, it couldn't even come close to the reward, or even to be next to, or to be on the outside watching a reward in the world to come, in the spiritual realm. And I had a nice conversation with somebody in person last week about what the difference is between the spiritual realm and the world to come. And the answer is, I don't really know if there's a difference. Olam Haba is a different world than this one, a world of peace, a world where the Mashiach comes and creates sort of less disharmony, a world where the righteous come back, a world of Mechayei HaMetim, where God raises the dead, all these different kinds of belief systems that we have about the world to come. The world to come is also an extremely spiritual experience. It's like all Yetzer HaTov, and there's like sort of no need for Yetzer Hara. So you could think about Yetzer Hara, the material inclination, as just consuming something, like eating, right? Um, and in the spiritual realm, there's no need for consumption, so to speak, right? Or we assume that there's no need for eating. There's no need for fuel of any kind, right? It's just Yetzer Hatov. It's just love. It's just connection. There may not be a body in the spiritual realm, although we do think of the Mechei Hametim and the bones and the people coming back. We don't know if we're corporeal quite in the same way that we're corporeal now. And so, we get very attached to our bodies and our experiences with being able to see things and taste things and touch things. And the Olam Haba is much more about the Yetzer Hatov, is touching the spiritual. And so the connection, of course, between sort of part one and part two tonight is part one is about what does it mean to elevate yourself in this world, to make the right choices, to actually exercise free will, to actually make a difficult decision. And how does that elevate us? And then, part two is really about where does it elevate us to? Where are we going? Do we have a goal in mind? Is it Olam Haba? Or is it to get as close to Olam Haba in this life as we can? Maybe that's the best way for us to look at it, to get as close, be able to touch it. Like Moses in the cleft of the rock, wanting to meet God face to face. To be able to just be next to it, right? To just be there. And so how can we even get up to the mountain or inside the rock if we're not thinking about it on a daily basis? If we're not thinking about going up, right? That's why they call making aliyah, or going to Israel making aliyah, right? Literally going up spiritually. And by the way, a lesser known concept is when you leave Israel, you move somewhere else, they call it yeridah. You could call it going down. It's interesting. So let's just do a short meditation here on this idea of bringing ourselves up. And I want us to focus on, waking up, because it's the most concrete version of up that we have. When our bodies literally rise out of the bed, we are upright, if we're so able. We sit up. And if we're lucky enough, we stand up. And what are we up for? Right? What are the first things we think about when we get up? Probably logistics. Brush teeth, take pills, comb hair, take shower, check schedule, eat breakfast, worry about project, worry about email, worry about phone calls, are we making time for the spiritual on a daily basis? So let's just do a visualization where we get up in the morning. We don't grab our phone. We don't immediately run to have breakfast, make coffee. we just sit in bed and breathe? Maybe we look up and say thank you. Maybe we just notice our breath. Maybe we just not take it for granted. Maybe that's like the only thing. There were unfortunately many deaths occurred today in our community, and people passing away, and I spoke to a relative of one person, and she said very eloquently, to be born is to die. It is a certainty. And so, what are we doing with the breath? We thank our body for working in the morning. Do we run after our worries like greyhounds on a track? Greyhounds chase a mechanical rabbit, as far as I know. And what I also know is that they never catch it. Just when you get up tomorrow, ask yourself, what am I breathing for? What am I living for? We're going to bring our hands together here. A little bit of a shorter session tonight. We'll be back in July. I believe it'll be on the 11th and the 18th. And as always, we'll chant the Shema. Thank ourselves for this practice. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Thank you all for spending this time with me tonight. Again, we're thinking about choice and free will, real choice, real free will, right? And spiritual practice every day, waking up and rising up and standing up. Remember, the rabbis, our ancestors, thought it synonymous, standing up and praying. That standing up was the equivalent of praying. The praying was the equivalent of standing up, which is what the Amidah means, to stand up. Have a good evening. See you in a few weeks.